de la famille.
Well, first off, thank you to the family and Nomadic Mentors for inviting me to Berlin. It's my first time here, and I'm just excited to be here. And my goal here is for this to be an interactive conversation. So I know that's always hard with a talk, but please raise your hand. If you have a question, raise your hand. And I want to make the best use of your time. And I know you're taking time out of a Wednesday in an amazing city, Berlin, which I've had a great time in, and I appreciate it. So the talk is creating a unicorn. And, I like to attach silly names to things, so we'll see if it sticks. I think what's fun is Eileen Lee in Silicon Valley created, first talked about the concept of a unicorn, and it was published in TechCrunch in that article. And it really encapsulates the potential of a startup. The first is a unique, lasting company that is around for 50 years. Think about Oracle, and HP, started in a garage, and employs tens of thousands of people, and really makes its mark on the world, and really empowers a lot of people. Pretty special. And Europe, Unicorn. So, excuse my silly name, but we'll see if it sticks. So, we're going to talk about tonight is Silicon Valley, and the unique advantages of Europe, and really talk about. I'm excited to brainstorm an action plan around, because I truly believe the next 50 unicorns will be global companies. Now the question is, where will the headquarters be? That's an important question, but no matter what, they will have major European operations. So whoever starts them will be spending a lot of time in Europe, whether they're based here or just have major operations here. And I love the family's concept of, it's not Germany, it's not France, it's Europe, which we'll talk about in this conversation. So let's take the best of Silicon Valley. So what is the secret of Silicon Valley? One word. Who knows? Okay. Network. What? Innovation. Anyone else? Resources. What? Failure. All good. Density. All right, well, my take is mentorship. And we talked a little bit about pay it forward, but I'm going to tell my story about Bob Tinker. So how many of you went to university? Okay. How many of you had office hours? Concept. It's basically where an alumni comes in and helps students. And in Silicon Valley and in a lot of colleges around the world, it's a concept. And so I was starting Kahuna 7 years ago, and I knew I didn't know a lot. And so Bob Tinker at the time was the founder and CEO of Mobile Iron, which was one of the fastest growing mobile companies ever. And he was doing office hours for students. Now, I was 8 years removed from being a student, but an administrator gave me a heads up that Bob was doing office hours. So imagine if you're Bob Tinker and you hear students walking in and saying, hey, what do I want to do with my career? Hey, I'm thinking about mobile. What's your advice? And I come in, and they're like, whoa, this one looks a little old. What's going on here? I sit down, say, hey, Bob, my name's Adam Marchick. I started a company called Kahuna, and I'd like for you to invest. Bob goes, he pauses for a second. He goes, Adam, you're a little crazy, and I like it. So you freeze frame a month later. He invests in Kahuna, and he really just becomes an amazing mentor, where I put this picture up of him taking Mobile Iron public. He was a month from going public, and when you're about to go public, you go on this thing called the road show. It's one of the most arduous things a CEO does. I mean, it is 18-hour days, structured. So if it's an 18-hour day structured, you can only imagine how many hours per day the CEO is spending. he met with me 7 a.m. for breakfast in the middle of his roadshow because I needed help. I mean, I can talk about commitment. And it's that mentorship in Silicon Valley that is just so amazing, because as a founder, you're supposed to do things you've never done before extremely well. And the only way to do it is to learn from others. I'll tell you another story. Who here, as a founder or as an early employee, has had to say no to their first customer? Anyone? So it's hard. It's really hard because you work so hard to get that initial person to say yes. And then when you have to say no, it's painful. So at Kahuna, I'll never forget, I worked and sold into this gaming company. We sold personalized push notifications and email for mobile applications, and we got into this gaming company. Really good one. And they said, all right, we're going with Kahuna. And then who here knows what procurement is? So procurement is a function in a company whose sole goal is to negotiate with vendors. And so I got introduced to the procurement person. And, I know how to build products and hopefully create companies. I don't know anything about procurement. And I was supposed to negotiate the contract. And who do you think won? I got, what's the German word for hosed? Anyone? What is it? I was taken to the cleaners. And it was a contract that you have this feeling of, like, every once in a while you're doing something, your head's down, and then you kind of pause and you say, wait a second, is this the right thing for the company? And signing that contract would not have been the right thing for the company. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's so hard to turn down a customer. And so once again, I reached out to a mentor. And this was like a few $100,000 deal. And, big, huge deal to me. Would have been 5% of our revenue, big deal. And I asked the CEO and I explained to them, I'm really torn up about this. And it's really a big deal. He goes, I understand where you're coming from, Adam. In my last company, I had to say no to American Express, and it was a $10 million contract. So first off, I'm like, oh, I guess it's all perspective. And secondly, he empathized, but then also helped me recognize it's okay. So that mentorship is critical. And that's what's so great about the family and getting a network of people and figuring out what is the network of mentors in Europe, and how do we recreate that Silicon Valley magic here. So I'll give you a quick bio, and first disclaimers. I've never created a unicorn. Kahuna's doing great. We're on year 8. I'm chairman of the board. It's a lot of fun. Voice Labs is, a few people. We're in we're past the garage stage, but it's early. Second, I'm not an expert on Europe. That's what the family's here for. And I had a third, but I forgot it. So then the next question is, well, then why are you talking? So I was fortunate enough that I was born in Silicon Valley, and started coding early on. In the first company I programmed for had a IPO, a unicorn, multi-billion-dollar IPO. Didn't last though, so actually not a unicorn. And then I went to Stanford in computer science. I worked at a built-to-last company, Oracle. I was part of Facebook early, which was fantastic. And then I started Kahuna 7 years ago. And what's fun is Kahuna served fast-growing mobile app companies. And so as an investor, I funded a few unicorns. But most importantly at Kahuna, you see in bold, Skyscanner, Booking, DraftKings, Rent the Runway, Paddy Power. I served a number of unicorns, including some Eurocorns. And I learned a bit. And here's what I'm sharing tonight is some of the learnings. So why Combinator? It is an incubator in Silicon Valley. Why is it the #1 incubator? Fine. Yeah. Huh? Alumni? Mentorship? Competition? Yeah. Visibility? Yeah. Okay, yeah. seeing it before and being willing to take a chance? Cool. Well, so who did competition? Nailed it. So when you talk to alumni of Y Combinator and say, why was it so impactful? They don't talk about demo day. They don't talk about the sweatshirt they got. They talk about the peer pressure and competition of being with this group of people all trying to build the best company in the world. And it's just, it's intense. But it made them a better company, and it helped them grow and evolve faster. And that's part of this thing. What's so great about the family is this cohort of people all doing the same thing at the same time and creating this, all right, let's collaborate, but also, let's compete. And not in a bad way, but just in a, hey, who can grow faster? And that sense really evolves a company quickly. And then success begets success, reach. That when you have that alumni and that network of people who've been there and have made it through and were exactly where you were, and then created Airbnb and Stripe, who's in this building. I mean, how awesome is that, right? So the third is, this is a great quote from Hugo, where this is his favorite slide of the family. And he's like, I love this slide and I hate this slide. Because it's really, one of those things that it's actually the biggest thing the family can do is Sam Altman of Y Combinator talks about fake work. Because, let's say you raise your round, you get some press, and suddenly, you're asked to talk. And talking doesn't help your product. It's product and customers. That's the real work. Everything else is fake work. That said, these things are all important. A law firm, a bank, funding, office, first hire, first customer. These things are what I call necessary, not sufficient. And that goes to, what's the number one job of the CEO? Anyone? Not run out of money. That's your number one job. And this was my experience starting Kahuna, where Ted Wang at Fenwick and West, so when I was a VC, he represented a startup. And once again, he took me to the cleaners. I mean, at every point of the discussion around terms, he basically showed me what's up. And so when I started Kahuna, I said, Ted, you're way better at me than this. Will you be my lawyer? I said, sure. Bank, Rod Werner and I have been buddies for 12 years. He's now at City National Bank. 1-minute phone call where he said, yep, I'll set up an account and I'll be generous on, low fees because you're getting started. Initial funding, this is really rude, but I just got lucky where SoftTech VC, Jeff Clavier, who I think is in Paris right now at Le Web, and Charles Hudson, who I went to Stanford with. We're at SoftTech. And I was currently at Bain Capital, a venture capitalist. And I said, hey, Charles, I think I'm going to go and start this thing. He's like, all right, we're in. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was that initial funding. To get free office space, it took 2 beers. By the second beer, Dave Bergeron at T3 said, hey, crash at my place. First hire, credit to my co-founder of Kahuna, Jacob Taylor, who had built Sugar CRM before. And he's like, oh, I have a great guy we should hire. And first customer. This was Scott Cannon of Mailbox, which got bought by Dropbox. He's like, I'll give it a shot, and let's not mince words. He knew it was just kidding. It wasn't the best product in the world yet, but he saw potential. And that velocity of company creation is really helpful. I would argue the first customer and first hire, that's core work, and funding, core work. And the faster that can happen, the more rapidly companies get created. So one of the takeaways is how do we increase the velocity or at least support the velocity here? Because it helps. So next half. First off, any questions about Silicon Valley? It's a big topic. We can have dinner. We have dinner, so we can talk about that as well. Any burning questions?
What do you need a bank?
You got to put your money somewhere. You put it in a couch.
Where they can do one?
Yeah, because if someone writes a check, you got to put it somewhere, right? And it needs to be a new bank account. And the difference between, and one of the things is, some banks are like, great, like we're going to charge $100 in fees each week. And it's like, we raised money from Sequoia. The next week, our first salesperson, Mercy, I was having her clip $3 coupons. As a founder, every dollar counts. Sometimes you're penny wise, pound foolish, and you got to learn. But I'm still to this day, I'm like, how do we save $5? I waited, literally, there was a flight, and if I changed the flight at 6 p.m., I'd pay $200. If I changed it at 1 a.m., I was charged $75. I stayed up to 1 a.m., Oh, yeah, I think, you start with lawyer and bank, and then kind of year 3, 4. Or month 9, excuse me. It's like that first year, you got to do your taxes, get some help. Any other questions? The family, where's Balthazar, or Lou, like, what's typical? Good question. Post it on the meetup group. Let's see if anyone responds. That's one of the things that when I was a venture capitalist, like venture capitalists can be really helpful in increasing the velocity of this stuff. So that's one of the great things a VC can do. That's kind of a layup for them because they work with 30 companies. First, I only worked with 1. Cool. All right, let's keep it rolling. All right, unique advantages. Come on, clicker. All right, biggest advantage. 1 word. Who knows it? Shout it. Don't be bashful. Nailed it. You read the slides before? So talent in many cities. This is really hard in Silicon Valley. I mean, part of the reason we raised $60 million for Kahuna was we were doing big data, machine learning, AI. These people are not cheap. And they're deserving, but they're expensive. It's exciting that I was talking with Roger Ehrenberg at IA Capital Advisors, great VC based in New York. He's like, hey, there is some artificial intelligence expertise coming out of the UK, Cambridge, Oxford, Imperial College. That's exciting. I'll ask actually another question. Who here knows what's one of the hottest, it's kind of not fair, one of the hottest tech companies or tech cities in the US right now? It's not on either of the coasts. Anyone? Was it Minneapolis? Good one? Kansas? Nope. Pittsburgh. Why Pittsburgh? Carnegie Mellon autonomous driving expertise. Uber just opened. Google just opened. If I were geography ambivalent, I'd move to Pittsburgh, or in the U.S. because it's going to be. it's growing like weed. So in the same way, we're going to have centers of excellence here, and there's a real opportunity. Last night my current company, VoiceLabs.co, does voice analytics for Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant, and soon Microsoft Cortana and IBM Watson. I was at a meetup last night for voice developers. There was a ton of people there. It's one of the most vibrant meetup groups in the world for voice. So I'm excited for hopefully Berlin to be a center of excellence for voice, and I get to come back. And it's fun. So Roger, credit to him for talking through this with me. And he also is on the board of Cognitive Logic, based in the UK. Cool data machine learning company. Second biggest advantage, many markets close by. Now, this is a blessing and a curse, right? And it's one of those things where I'm not going to say, hey, Europe's utopia. It's really nice to be in the US, and there's a massive market, in a 5-mile radius in Silicon Valley. Our first 20 customers, most of them were drivable. Actually, that's not true. My 7th customer was Booking.com. The reward I got for that was a standing Monday morning 5:30 a.m. call. So I don't recommend it. People are talking about like, hey, my first 5 customers, should I get someone from the US? Like, only if you don't like sleeping. It's like, look local for your first 5 customers because you're going to have to work with them and you're going to have to be available. And it's not fun to do 5 a.m. Skypes. That's not, no one honestly says that's fun. And now this is company 3, sleep matters. You make bad decisions when you're tired. Lou saw the family has this great apartment, and we're scaling Voice Labs. So at 2:30 a.m., I was on this call, and thank goodness for my co-founder, Alex, where it's like, Adam, you don't have to talk anymore. I know you can't think, so just listen. And by 3 a.m., I got to go to bed, and you're just not making good decisions at 3 a.m. And so going back, the biggest thing to scaling is product market fit. And I think it's Steve Blank coined the term, where it's, and Mark Andreessen talks about it, where it's you know who your perfect customer is, and they love the product you're delivering. And what happens is you create it in one market, and you're like, oh, I got the template. I nailed it. I'm scaling, I'm growing. And you're like, oh, great. And Balthazar talked about this, where it's like, oh, let's just go put one person in London, and we'll use the same playbook, and then it totally fails. I can only imagine the scaling to 83 countries at one time. That team probably didn't sleep. And so you can run, all right, let's scale in Germany, let's scale in the UK, and let's understand what works and what doesn't. And it's easier to do that because your countries are closer. And so you can understand, okay, what is not part of our core product market fit and what is? What translates to other countries and what doesn't? Really important. And going back, the next 50 unicorns will be global companies. And the question is, where will they be headquartered, which is a question, but not the most important question. No groupthink. This is fun. So, in Silicon Valley, it's an echo chamber. We think everyone should have Google Glasses, I don't know. Why doesn't everyone have an iPhone? That's ludicrous, right? And once again, this experience of working with Booking.com, they are one of the most innovative companies. And it's execution innovation. For example, they cracked Google SEO and SEM early, and they did it amazingly well. And Oliver, he's an interesting cat. He's a great guy, one of the sharpest people I've ever come across. And so after all these 5:30 a.m. Monday morning calls, 9 months later, he was in San Francisco. And I was like, oh, this is our biggest customer. This is the best name. Hey, whatever you need, I'm available. And he was nice enough. He's like, why don't we go to a few meetings together? And we had this meeting, and not to be rude, but a little rude. It was right at the time Twitter was scaling, and it was hot. Twitter was, in Silicon Valley, talked about at every bar, which is a little sad, but it was hot. It was really, got to be part of Twitter, got to advertise on Twitter, got to be, part of Twitter. And we go to this meeting, and there's 10 Twitter people talking to Booking.com, which is one of the largest digital meeting spenders in the world, about all the advertising products Booking.com could use. And Oliver was super nice in the way only a Dutch man can. Not super expressive. And we had this great meeting. And he was very nice, said, let's keep in touch. And we come out of the meeting, and he goes, none of those products will help me. There's no groupthink. It's all original thought. And a lot of creating a unicorn company is being contrarian and right. Because if you're always going with the accepted answer, you might create a good company, but not a great company. So in conclusion, I think what's so exciting about coming out here and being a self-proclaimed non-expert in Europe is it's really fun. Let's think about how do we increase the velocity? How do we do these things in the follow-up conversations? All right, how do we solve some of the hurdles? And you can make tangible benefits. We can increase the velocity of companies, no problem. We can think about mentorship, no problem. We can actually fix these things or solve these things or innovate on these things. And I'm excited to do it with you and with Q&A and discussion. And I'm excited for the family to do it and groups like Nomadic Mentors. And I always like to say, all right, let's come out of something with this. I really, for as much as I talk, unfortunately, as many would say, I don't talk to talk. I don't like it. I'm not that good at it. Where I like to say, all right, what can we do from this? And I'd love to invest into companies out of this week. And it might be 6 months from now. We have a cool company going to Voice Camp. Yay, John, BetaWorks, Voice Camp. for funding voice-first companies. So it might be them, it might be. But part of it is, and I am not a professional investor. I'm an angel investor that makes one investment every quarter. But I'm excited to potentially invest here because I do believe in global companies. And whenever I see a European company funded by Sequoia, it's usually like going to be a huge home run because like Truecaller and then an Australian company, Atlassian, they're funded by Excel. When they get funding by Excel, it's usually because their metrics are amazing because they're 12 hours away. So to catch the eye and close a large round from Excel, Sequoia, Benchmark, and Andreessen, it's because they're on fire. So that would be fun to be a part of, and I'd love to be a part of it. So in conclusion, thank you for having me, and I'm excited for any and all questions.
So what are you looking for as an angel investor?
Yeah, so the first is I'm probably only going to invest if the family invests. So we start there. Because, for example, I don't want to get up at 4 a.m. a lot, So the one thing I can't be is like always available to a European company because I do need to sleep. And my priority 1 through 10 is voice labs right now. So, but what I am looking for is, and this is when I'm a VC, when I was a VC, is I described it as someone would walk into the room and they describe a world to me that I didn't know about, and they'd be right. For example, I was talking about Okta. It was called SaaSure, and they went public last week and are a truly innovative enterprise software company. And they walked in, and I wasn't an investor, but Andreessen and Mike Maples were. And they talked about how, hey, we're going from desktop software that you like click on and you like sign into to Salesforce and Zendesk SaaS software. And signing in, you don't want to sign into 30 of them, and you don't want to like have 30 passwords. So we got to like figure this all out. So that move from desktop software to SaaS software, new world, I heard about, but I didn't know about. And then, hey, the world should be single sign in once, and then you're in all the accounts. Like, yeah, totally. Like, oh, you're doing that? That's awesome. Let's get involved.
When you start out, there's a little bit of overcloud of different types of investors that you can approach or that approach you at the beginning and also throughout the project lifetime and throughout the company lifetime. What would be? I know that it's really depending on the type of company, but do you have any kind of advice on what is exactly the constellation that you should be looking at in types of investors?
Sure. So there's a good question. What I'll do is I'll really focus on the first investor. This is the question: what do you look for in a seed investor? But really, it's any investor, and it's integrity and alignment. So integrity, it's someone who just does the right thing because life's too short, and you got to trust that person. I mean, these company creation, I mean, it's so intense. And if you don't trust, like, bad things happen. Then alignment is more around, it's not thinks the same way you do. Opposite. So for example, the Churn-In Group, our seed funders. Great group based in LA. Their managing director in San Francisco, Mike Kearns, worked with my co-founder, so integrity, trust. And then Alex said, hey, have you seen this Echo thing? I'm like, no. Started digging in, saw that voice first was going to be a big market and it would affect media. And the Churn-In Group's like, we agree. We are aligned that this is going to be a big deal. We don't know how. We don't know how it's going to shake out. And we don't know exactly like how it's going to affect media, but we know it's going to affect media where instead of, Spotify, it's affected Spotify big time. I only use Spotify on my Echo now. And when I use an app to pick a station, I'm annoyed because I'm used to saying, hey, Alexa, play hip hop. Embarrassingly, I listen to hip hop, and it's like, I don't want to search for, I guess, Kanye, which is less people are doing these days, but Drake, more life, I guess. So alignment, integrity and alignment. Questions? Cool. Well, looking forward to talking to you all, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Que la famille.